Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wealth Tips with Dr. Mark, where I help you take your small business and think ahead and plan and turn it into a big business. Now today what I want to talk about is there's been a number of news events that have come out lately where unexpected things happened to the company, and I don't think they were adequately prepared. So that got me thinking, and I thought, well, let me come back, and we may have talked about this topic before, but here's a new way of thinking about this, and it's timely because of the news information. The first thing I want to ask you is, are you prepared? There's always unexpected events. They happen all the time. Do you have plans for what to do when they happen? Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the doomsday prepper type person where you're running around in a gas mask, but think about all of the stuff that happens to you on a regular basis. Your car, you have an accident, or you injure yourself, or your best employee leaves, or heaven help you if you say something that can be misconstrued and one of the people online gets a hold of it and starts tearing you to shreds. There's all sorts of things that can happen to you. And have you taken a minute to pause and stop and think about what those things are and what you would do if they happened to you? Now, what brought this to mind was Zoom, the company that does the teleconferencing, just was in the news for the last day or two. Apparently, they installed a web server on the Macs, and that web server is outside accessible outside of their software. So you can actually create a program that'll ping somebody's Mac, and if they have the Zoom app installed, you can turn on the webcam and you can watch what that webcam is showing you. Now, is that a huge issue? No, not particularly. It's not a Mac vulnerability. This is Zoom that's causing this problem. But the Zoom company, the way they're handling it, they're kind of like, yeah, it's not any big deal. And that may not be the best way to handle that. And that got me thinking of all of the things that could happen to you and your company. Have you given thought to what kinds of things might happen and how you would respond? Because that's the most important piece of this, is if you have thought about it and developed a plan, you'll much more quickly be able to respond, and you'll be able to mitigate the damage that happens to you and your company. Now, there's lots of events that are happening on an ongoing basis. Some of these are micro. By micro, I mean specific to you and your business. And then there are macro events like the economy goes into a giant recession or something like that, or there's a war or some sort of thing. The micro things are the ones that you should pay really close attention to, because those are the ones that you have control over. So your top employee leaves. Your number one client goes somewhere else and doesn't renew their account. Or any number of hundreds of different things might happen that are of varying degrees of severity. Have you thought about that? Have you figured out what you would do in the event of that happening? It's probably not best for you to just go, I'll worry about it later and I'll figure out what happens when it happens. For example, suppose you're a university and something happens on campus and you start getting bad press about it. This was just in the news recently where a university lost a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against a local business where the students from the university were rioting and picketing outside that business, and lots of details there. But the short version is the university ended up losing that lawsuit for millions of dollars against that business. These things, bad press, can be just crushing to a company. Have you thought about it? Do you have a plan if something might happen? What might happen? Maybe there's something that you're doing that could be misconstrued or properly construed, depending upon what kind of company you're running, and that could cause you harm. Have you thought about it? Do you have a plan in place for what to do if these kinds of things happen? Analyze the types of things that might happen. There are some things that would be really, really severe if they happen to you, but they're not very frequent. You have insurance on your house in case your house burns down. That event is so severe and so financially difficult that you can't pay to rebuild your house, so you have insurance that covers that. You pay some small ongoing fee to offset that risk. You have a liability policy on your business, right? There's other kinds of things that are really, really severe. We want to make sure we're aware of what those things might be, and then we have a plan in place to mitigate that. And then there's lots of ongoing things that are less severe, but we're not going to worry about those as much because they're not as damaging, they're not as harmful. And then there's some things that are, more or less likely. So we'll gauge them in terms of how severe it is and how likely it is to happen. I suggest that you set aside a regular time, put it on your calendar, book out 30 minutes a month or an hour a month or whatever it takes for your business and your industry to stop and think about what kind of bad stuff might happen, what kinds of things might be coming down the pipeline, and how could you respond to those. That way, if any of those things ever do happen, we hope they don't, but if they do, you're ready to go. You've got a plan. Does that mean you're going to have the best plan? No, but at least you've thought about it, and muscle memory will help you quickly act in the event of that. That's why you should have a hurricane plan or any of those other disaster preparedness plans. That way, when and if it ever does happen, you're ready to go. You're not scrambling around to go, oh my gosh, what do I do? When this is something that you knew it was likely or you knew it was unlikely but severe, and you should have had a plan for it. So set aside a monthly time for it, visualize that event happening and what you would do in response, make a plan for it. Most of your buildings, you have the fire exit signs on the wall. That's to help you get out in the event of an emergency. You need to do these kinds of things for your business. So to recap, analyze the kinds of things that might be happening in your company, particularly the bad ones. Make sure that you evaluate the likelihood of that thing happening, and then that you plan your response for it. So I need to go buy this particular type of insurance, or I need to go educate somebody else in my company on my job in case I get hit by a car, whatever that thing may be. But by doing so, by taking just a little bit of time in advance, you'll make sure that you're much better prepared to handle that event when it happens to you. Thanks. I'm Dr. Mark Lane. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you soon.